Hi, how you doing? Hello, youth workers. Welcome to our workshop preparing for the summer of play. We all know what year it's been like for the kids and the young people in Northern Ireland, in fact, across the world. And we also know how important it is that this year, more than ever, they get a summer of play. My name is Peter McCartney, and I work for an organisation wrong shoulder called PlayBoard. PlayBoard, as you probably already know, promote children's play across Northern Ireland. And that's really important at the moment because we all recognise how important children's play is. And that's why there's a big drive this summer for a summer of play. And we're delighted that the youth service are getting behind this summer of play and encouraging you as a youth worker to promote play in your youth setting over the summer for children and young people across Northern Ireland. Hopefully this webinar will give you some ideas, first of all, about why that's important, and secondly, about how to go about doing that. So enjoy. So we're talking about this summer being a bit of a boost for children, a play boost for kids, because we know that the year that we've had has had an impact on them and their play. We've called it a playdemic. They've been through lots of things like after school closures, youth club closures or online delivery, public parks and places closed, no opportunities to go to grandparents and seek refuge or respite there, and complete lockdown for part of the year as well. But they've had other things as well. At home, maybe more arguments at home where parents maybe become separated because of those arguments, because of the intensity of being in one place all the time. Opportunity and disagreements that result from that in terms of visiting rights and so on. And this lack of opportunity to go to grandparents or to go to aunts and uncles and family and friends to get some respite, both for the parents and for the children. And as well as that, of course, children like ourselves have been worried about contracting the virus. So they've had a tough time, such a tough time that you could say that there's an emergency at the moment. We need to do something about this, hence the summer of play. This is a serious business. Play is the most important thing that children do. So if they don't get an opportunity to do it, we need to do something about it. We need to give kids this summer some CPR. So the question is, are you ready for it? Well, let's have a look and see. Here's your first task. This will help you get tuned into this thing called play. What I want you to do is I want you to think about when you were between the age of maybe 5 or 8 or 10 or 12. What sorts of things did you do? What sorts of play did you experience then? What did you do? Where did you do it? And who did you do it with? Spend 30 seconds thinking about that, about your play memories. What did you play? Where did you play? And who did you play with? Well, like me, you're probably remembering lots of play experiences, which tended to be outside, which tended to be to go from breakfast when you were thrown out of the house until it got dark or it was time to come in for tea. And all the things that you did during that time tended to be with other kids. There didn't tend to be other adults involved. So, I mean, you'll have identified lots and lots of different types of play, and we'll look at some of those different types of play in a wee minute. But those play memories give us some indicators. Your play memories and my play memories give us some indicators of what good quality play might be. If we remember it, it must be memorable. So let's think about what some of those quality play opportunities might represent. Well, first of all, it was fun. All those play memories that you identify are fun. Of course, there are times when play isn't fun. whenever you don't get picked for the football team or your team lose a match or whatever, then that has an impact on you. But that's all important in terms of your experience. But more often than not, play is fun. You didn't leave the house in the morning to socially, physically, intellectually, creatively, culturally develop. You went out of the house in the morning during the summer to play because it was fun. So that's central characteristic of good quality play. But the second one is that it's owned by the kids. The play that we remember when we were young, there weren't any adults involved. Indirectly, they might have given us some information, some of which we obeyed and some of which we probably didn't obey. But the play that we remember, and therefore the play that's memorable, was owned by us, was directed by us, was controlled by us. So that must be a key characteristic of good quality play. And of course, there's good variety. I'm sure you have identified lots of physical things you did outside, lots of intellectual things that you did outside, because play is active, not just active physically, but it's active mentally as well. Mentally in terms of working things out, but mentally in terms of emotionally, the heart. So through play, we got a chance to be physically active, be mentally active, and emotionally active as well. And for lots of us, there were probably elements of risk involved, jumping from a big height, knocking on the door and running away in case somebody caught you. Intrigue, trying to find out where a river went when it went in under a tunnel. And of course, a fair degree of imagination as well, where we pretended particular objects were actually something else. Like a guitar, I still do that in fact. So characteristics of good play are that it's owned by the kids, adults aren't involved, and it tends to be outside. So let's think about, if those are the characteristics of good play, let's think about how we can make play happen then for children. The International Play Association, for example, recognize how important play is, particularly in times of crisis, because play gives kids an opportunity to stay emotionally healthy. It helps them be physically active. It gives them a chance to get some exercise. It helps them to relax and forget about all those worries that they have. It helps them make sense of the world around them and the changes that are happening in their world. And of course, that's really important at the moment. And it helps them to cope with feelings that are difficult or frightening. Play gives kids those opportunities. So it's really important that we give them opportunities to play this summer. It's an emergency. We've got to be like a play doctor. So here's your induction training. Let's give play some CPR this summer. What do we mean by CPR? Well, first of all, let's look at C. C stands for clued in. We've got to be clued into play. We've already got a wee bit of an insight into what play is from our own experiences. So let's recognize that for all of us, we have some expertise in play because we used to play ourselves when we were young. So let's get clued into play. Let's try and understand better about what it is. We need to recognize how valuable it is, and we need to make sure that everybody else knows that. Lots of people think that play is what children do when they have nothing better to do. Whereas we know, in fact, it is the better thing to do. Let's make sure we tell everybody that. And having fun, which is a real reason why children play, is worthwhile. There are loads of serious things happening at the moment. Children's mental health and well-being, how they feel about themselves, is under threat at the moment. We've got to give them an opportunity to have fun, to get some joy back into their lives, and play will help us do that. And then the third, and maybe the most important thing about being clued into play, is just letting them get on with it. Stepping back and letting it happen. Just like we did whenever we were young. Let the children be the boss. Now, of course, there might be times when you need to step in and add value to the play, or even curb the play in some way or manage the play in some way, because the kids are, and the children and the young people are getting maybe a bit unsafe. So there might be a need for us to step in at some time, but don't take it over. Add value to the play rather than take it over. So that's the C. C stands for being clued into play. In other words, what we're talking about is what I like to call DIY play, where children choose when to play, what to play, how to play, and even when to stop. So that's the best sort of play of all, DIY play, play that's led by the children themselves. So we're giving kids CPR. C stands for being clued into play. What about P? What's P stand for? P stands for permission. We kind of think that we give kids permission to play all the time, whereas in fact, quite often we're giving kids the opposite picture. We're asking them to be a bit quieter. We're asking them not to be quite so messy. So P stands for permission, giving kids permission to play, permission to make noise. So when we're arranging where the play is going to take place, we don't want to arrange it beside where the children, the wee babies are sleeping, or where there are people working, or where old people live, or whatever. We want to try and arrange it. Otherwise, we'll be telling them to keep quiet all the time. Play is noisy. So make sure that the space where children are playing is a space where they can make noise, and therefore where you can give them permission to make noise. Permission to make a mess. Don't be doing paint in a room with carpet. And pretty basic, isn't it? Pretty sensible. Permission to make a mess. Give them old clothes so that they're not wearing their good school uniform whenever they're playing. Give them permission to use any object, that object or whatever object, for something else that's not. So a saucepan for a wee hat, or a cardboard box that you've been keeping to carry your groceries from the store that afternoon. Give it to the kids and let them play with it. Permission to get dirty, and permission to be really silly. And one of the ways that you might encourage kids to be really silly in their play is, of course, that you might be silly yourself. So one of your roles as an adult may well be to model the play and to model being silly. Because if you're silly, the kids know that they can be silly as well. And permission to be bored. Boredom is good. It's great when kids come to you and say, oh, I'm bored, because that's a real motivation for creativity, for using their imagination, for them going and playing. So allow them, give them the opportunity and their permission, therefore, to be bored, because that's the stimulus for really good play. In other words, we're talking about giving them permission to play. Okay, so C stands for clued into play. I nearly forgot what it was there. P stands for permission, and R stands for resources. We've got to give kids the resources that will support their play. Now, it doesn't have to be all this expensive equipment. We've all heard the story of the child at Christmas who plays with a box rather than the big expensive toy that's in it. So when we're talking about when we're talking about resources, we're not talking about dear things. First of all, in terms of resources, we're talking about time. Give them time to do their own thing, to do their own play, where they're not programmed to do this or programmed to do that, or timetable to do this or timetable to do that. Give them space in their time to do their own thing. Okay, so that's one resource. The second resource is, in fact, space. You need to create an area where kids can make a mess, where kids can make noise, where kids can do their own thing and be themselves without disturbing other people that are annoying others, without other people interrupting their play or them being in particular danger. So two of the resources are time and space to play. And then, of course, there's the play equipment itself, what we call loose parts, equipment that's free and found across the place that you can use or children can use in order to play. Loose parts like toilet roll tubes, sticks, paint, chalks, boxes, old sheets, big tires and stuff. We'll come back to look at loose parts in a wee minute. But when we're talking about play props, things that children can play with, we're not talking about big expensive equipment. Primarily, we're talking about loose parts, and there's a picture of a whole clatter of loose parts. And those of you who are members of the Play Resource Warehouse in Belfast will know exactly what we're talking about. Where that scrap store, if you're a member, you can go in and collect any number of loose parts that the kids will then use in order to play. So this is what loose parts are. They really encourage the kids to use their imagination for them to be involved in their play. And they're things like natural resources like straw and mud, building materials like planks and hammers and pallets, big scrap materials like old tires, offcuts of material to build dens and so on, old guttering, which is great for water play, and crates, and house scrap materials, things that everybody find around the house, like sheets and paper and curtains and clothes and so on. Those are loose parts. Those are the best play props of all because they're free or very, very cheap, and they encourage the kids to use their imagination. Thanks for your time, folks. I hope you found that useful. Let's make it the best summer of play for the kids in Northern Ireland, for the children and young people in Northern Ireland. Boy, do they deserve it.